So I think you should
Good
speak
to
it,
see
sir.
everybody. Charlie, good to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to sharing a bit about AI and leadership. It's probably something I would say, particularly over the last 2 years, has been one of the more significant areas of focus for my personal professional career. And so when Charlie mentioned it a while back, I sort of jumped in because it's an opportunity not only to share, but I always end up learning when I do these presentations and discussions. And even though I can't hear you for some reason, I hope to engage and interact with you all through the chat, because this is way more fun if we can have a back and forth. And so I'll start with just this quote from Arthur C. Clarke. I used to use this quote all the time in presentations, especially when I would talk about kind of innovation and education, which is my background. He said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. I would say I sort of believe that when I used it, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Like it's ever. So here's how we'll spend, and I saw it was an hour and a half. Charlie and team, I got to tell you, my father-in-law is not doing so well, and so we're taking shifts at the hospital with him, and so my shift's in an hour, so I'm going to go about 50 minutes, and then hopefully we can follow up via email. I'll send you the deck so you guys can have that, and we can follow up in any way that we need to. But in terms of the 50 minutes that I'll spend with you all, I'm going to focus first on I'm going to call it AI literacy, but I'm going to make this point that we all as leaders need to be more than just AI lit. We need to sort of move into being experts, and I'll talk about that. I'll talk a little bit about how I think of some of the basics of using AI as a leader. And then I'll end with relatively quickly, but I'll end with if you're a leader and you're working in an organization, how you think about not just AI as an individual leader, but as an actual organizational framework, which I think is critical if you're a leader of a large team or a large organization. So let's just start though with a little bit about me. Charlie's heard this before, but just a funny tidbit about my background. I grew up on a Buddhist commune. My father was a direct student and teacher with a guy named Trungpa Rinpoche, which is pictured here. And so for the first like 4 or 5 years of my life, I grew up without running water. It was wild. And my just quick funny story is as a child, I was given, like all the children at the commune were given, a middle name by Rinpoche, and his middle name to me was Sopa. So that meant my initials were Andrew Sopa Sheen. So that spelled ass. So that was fun. Middle school was awesome. Thanks, Rinpoche. Maybe a sense of humor. Sopa also means patience. And if you've ever worked with me, I'm like, let's do it now. So there's a bit of irony in there as well. But interesting fact about me. Another interesting fact about me is it's my wife on the right. And one of the things that we sort of like to brag about is we won the Four Seasons $100,000 wedding in Dallas, and it was crazy. This is a point in the night where my wife is like kind of scolding me under the table because me and my friends should not have open bar for 3 days. But that was a wild, fun wedding. That's my real driver's license picture. I pretty much show this in every keynote or presentation I do just because I still can't believe it's real. I get usually made fun of. People ask me, like, did you wear sunscreen back in the day? But why I like to show this is I'm a high energy person, and that kind of wild, crazy person is like who I really am, even though I have to sort of tame it at work. I spent the last 5 years as a chief learning officer for the Penn Foster Group, and I just left in December to pursue something more faith based. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And I'm really Penn Foster Group. It was a great 5 years. We did a lot of amazing stuff, including driving 15% improvement in completion year over year last year. So a lot to be proud of. Love the mission, love the people, but really excited about doing more faith-based stuff. But in the interim, I'm doing three things. One is, which will get announced today and timely given the topic of today, is I'm going to chair the Higher Education Advisory Board for LearningMate, which is a really large organization, billion-dollar organization that I've worked a lot with over my time as a chief academic officer and scaled online learning environments. And the goal of the advisory board is to really inform and help organizations better take advantage of innovation in higher education driven by AI, right? So timely given this topic. And then I started a fellowship with the Institute for Higher Education, which really is about mentoring and publishing work that supports other leaders in higher education, sort of advance the field. So I'm pretty new underway as a fellow, but I'm looking forward to working with that group. And then finally, I'm on the board of a new ed tech company called Runways, which is it's cool. It's basically an internship matching service. So high schools or higher education organizations can use that platform to locate good internships for students in placement. All right, let's dive in. So AI. So just to kind of warm us up a bit, you've probably heard this before if you've sort of been into AI, but this was very profound to me when he first said it. The Alphabet CEO said that AI could be more profound than both fire and electricity. So like, think about that comment. Like, that's a pretty big, transformational, high octane Fortune 500 company leader say something like that. Like, that's a big deal. And so I just want to ground ourselves in like the moment we're in. It's a big deal. Like, generative AI and the advancements that are happening right now are a big deal. And so we as leaders really need to lean in. And you're going to hear that message again and again throughout the presentation. And I think in addition, what I would say is I think of generative AI a lot like the nuclear technology that was sort of breakthrough in the 1940s, right? Because on one hand, nuclear technology can power a giant Navy submarine, for 20 years. At the same time, it can incinerate a city. And so that analogy is true of AI as well. We can harness it for good. It can be a great equalizer, for example, but can also do bad stuff. And so another reason why we as leaders really need to take it seriously, we need to be experts at it, and we need to leverage it well, right? So with that in mind, let's just do a quick warm up. I'll have you can play along. All right. So if you're a nerd, sci-fi nerd like me, you've seen this movie 1,000 times. If you're not, maybe you haven't seen it, you don't remember it. But there's a movie called Blade Runner with Harrison Ford, which I thought was amazing. And it's a movie where replicants, basically human-looking robots that act almost perfectly human. And Harrison Ford Blade Runner is set out to ultimately determine who's really a human and who's this AI robot, right? The movie was made long time ago, but it was set in this futuristic scene. Does anybody know the year the original Blade Runner was supposed to be set in, where there's these like replicant robots walking around that you can't distinguish from humans? Any guesses in the chat? 2019. That's 2019 is the year that the original Blade Runner was supposed to be set in. I don't know how many of you guys remember the movie Her. I love this movie with Joaquin Phoenix. It's a movie where he essentially develops an intimate relationship with an artificial technology, and the technology played by Scarlett Johansson develops at a rapid pace, such that eventually it gets to the point where it's sort of beyond his level. And there's a really amazing scene where she tries to like be a conduit through a real person. Unbelievable movie. That movie, guess when that movie's supposed to be? 2025. So that was supposed to be set last year. This is my favorite, The Terminator with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Remember this movie, right? He's sent back in time to eliminate an individual who has a chance at defeating the robots. Sarah O'Connor guesses when the Terminator, the date in which the Terminator was that was sent back in time to 1984, but the date in the future that the Terminator took place, where essentially the robots take over. That's 2029. That's 3 years away. So wild. And then last but not least, I've got little kids, and so I see all the movies. Pixar, WALL-E, one of my favorite animation movies, took place in 2805. So we're a while away from WALL-E. But the question though that I posed to you, if you think about why kind of warm up with that kind of stuff, is that you have all of these depictions of the future, some good, some not so good. And a lot of those depictions that have taken place, like we're getting closer to the years, in some cases past them, in which that futuristic reality happens. And so I just posed this, like, what happens in 2026? Like it, that we're um, major progression in the advancements of generative AI has one example of what will happen. But I encourage you all as leaders and delving into this topic to like wrap your mind around what's next. You know, a lot of people are predicting what happens in 10 years, but not a lot of people are able to predict what happens in like 6 to 9 months. Like think about it, like what's next. It's important to kind of be on the edge of this stuff. And then finally, like given the significance of the topic, given that you're hearing people say that generative AI is as powerful as like fire and electricity, as dangerous as nuclear technology, and you're going to start to see these advancements continue and continue, like I would just say this is worth really learning, and it's worth learning well, which is one of my favorite quotes. And so that's why we're going to kind of begin with AI Lit 101. Now, in the room, I'm going to guess you have some folks, right? Or if you're online, you're going to have some folks who maybe feel more advanced to use AI every day in your life. And you may have somebody on the line who's kind of new to this. So I'm going to try to give you at least one nugget, no matter where you're at on the AI literate scale. But this is really key. This is foundational. And as I go around and speak and I'm on panels and chair a board, what I find is that often is the case, not always, but often is the case, there's not enough deeper knowledge of the basics of AI. And that is really key. And so that's where I want to begin. I want to like build some foundational knowledge. And the message I would send to you is, as a leader, think about moving from just functional AI, which is where I see a lot of people that I've worked with, right? Like they use ChatGPT, or they use a DALL-E to create an image, but they don't know it. They don't know a ton. They just know like the real bit. They just tinker here and there. To moving towards AI literate, which is what we're going to talk about for the next 15 minutes, to actually becoming an expert, to really becoming an expert in AI. I would challenge you all that we need to become experts. Like that's the time that we're in on this horizon of AI advancement. We need to become experts. And just the example I would give you is like, think about Microsoft Word. I would argue that most people who use Microsoft Word have only scratched the surface of its capabilities, right? Like Microsoft Word is capable of doing so much stuff, it's mind-boggling. But so often we just use, 10, 15% of the entire Microsoft suite. And that includes Word. So don't do that with AI. Like become a Jedi master. All right, so just real quick timeline, and I'll do this fast because I'm sure you guys have probably seen versions of this before. Here's like generative AI is what is the big breakthrough, right? Like in the 1950s, you had the Turing test, right, where you essentially had, this test to determine whether or not it was a computer or a human. There wasn't sentient or advanced intelligence; it was more mimicry, but still, you were able to do that. You started to have a first chatbot, which is really basic, right? Like fueled by a knowledge base. But then you have this period of time where behind the scenes a lot is happening. You have IBM Watson, et cetera. And then you have this moment where OpenAI launches this version of ChatGPT in 2022 that went literally, it went gangbusters. And then you have all of the releases and the advancements that have taken place between 2022 and 2025. And just to like wrap your mind around it, in the 2 months that original ChatGPT version in 2022 released, in 2 months, there were 2 million adopters, 2 million. That is by far the greatest amount of adopters in a period of time in the history of computer technology adoption. So like that's like this is a big deal. This is like a rocket ship, you know, off into space kind of thing. I'm going to go quick here just because, again, I'm going to send you guys the deck, but I think it's important to kind of know the basics, right? Everything from, you know, IBM Watson knowledge type AI to generative AI, which is what's kind of like fueling ChatGPT, as well as large language models. And then you have what I think is going to be a continued focus in 2026 and beyond is you have agentic AI. And if you haven't heard about agentic AI, it's worth really spending some time on, because now you're getting to this place where you're able to have AI perform tasks with limited, now notice the word limited, supervision. And so you're starting to get into this world where you can kind of mimic human decision making, solve problems real time, which is very different than like a custom GPT, which we'll talk about in a second. Because a custom GPT is just really a series of prompts that you have to input information into, where agentic AI is actually performing a task, right? Like that's a big deal. And so you'll continue to hear a lot about agentic AI, which is why I sort of highlighted it. This is important. It was about 3 years ago. This is my best friend. He's a professor of data science at SMU University, and he chairs and leads their data science master's program. We were sitting at a bar having a beer, and you know, he just started going off about AI and how transformational it's going to be. And you know, I was like, well, you know, he really understands what's behind the hood. I'm like, tell me, like, how does it work? And I shared this just very quickly with you because it's important to become an expert in AI. You don't have to master neural networks or machine learning or all that kind of stuff. Like, absolutely not. Like, that's many years of college and advanced higher education learning. But you can know like the basics. Like you can know just enough under the hood that you realize it's not magic, that there's actually statistical models and training that's taking place in order to give you this output. And so my encouragement, if you're with me on this ride to becoming an expert, to going from like AI literate to an expert, is like spend some time and understand what is behind the hood. And I'll just give you one simple example, right? You have to train these models. And so you train these models using data sets like the internet. And then you have to like continue to like program it. And so like the simple example, right, is like if I said to you peanut butter and, what would you say? The odds are that most of you would say jelly. That's not the only answer, right? It could be peanut butter and banana. It could be peanut butter and honey. And so the point is that these machine models are giving you an output that is trained over and over and over again. So it's more likely to be the right one for you, but it may not be the right one for you. It's not 100% right. It's not actual magic. There's not actual sentient. And so spend and try to better understand what's behind the hood. Again, you don't have to be like a PhD in neural networking or advanced statistics, but you should know the basics of how it all works. And then I would say to you is remember that AI, especially as leaders, this is important. And this is stuff I would tell my team all the time. You have to think of AI as not one thing, right? Think of all the tools that are out there. Think of it as like a toolbox, right? And so I'm in the education business, and so you know, if you're a professor, or if you're an instructional designer, you know, you have these different tools at your disposal that perform different tasks, right? I'm highlighting the ones that I use in my everyday work. I like ChatGPT, but I also like Gemini. If you're a team Microsoft person, you're probably using Copilot. I like word processing tools. I like the integration of Grammarly with Microsoft Word. I love creating like imagery and videos, so I subscribe to Dolly, right? But the point is like these different tools perform different tasks. And so I just encourage you to go spend some time in these different tools just so you get a sense of how they all work. And what I like to tell my team often is like, pretend like you're a super curious kid and you're just like clicking buttons and pushing things. I mean, literally, like go spend some time and familiarize yourself with these different tools. And then eventually like hone in on one or two that you feel really works for you, that really aligns with whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, right? But there's different tools with different purposes. That's the basic point. we won't have time today, and especially because I can't hear y'all. But when I send you this deck, I just encourage you to try these challenges if you haven't done them already. I know for my team, when I shared the version of this presentation with them, there were quite a few people who were blown away by what Notebook LM can do. And just a simple example, and we'll put this in the context of leadership. Let's just say you want to go study some leadership articles. You want to get up to speed on being a great leader, and maybe Covey wrote something, or Goldman wrote something, or Collins wrote something new. You can put that article right in Notebook LM. It can give you a 100-word summary, but it can also give you like an audio or video overview of it. And I don't know about your guys' personal learning preferences, but I love to listen while I walk. And so, I'll do everything from take like a 30-page article, turn it into an audio overview, and just listen to it while I walk. It's a great way to learn based on your learning preferences. And so, and this is just scratching the surface. Notebook LM can turn, an entire webinar into a podcast, and on and on and on. It literally is sometimes as fast as like clicking a button and waiting 10 seconds. So I just encourage you to check out these challenges. So let's shift into how do you actually leverage AI? How do you sort of kind of lean in to using AI and starting to become an expert? And I'll say this, I think this is really fundamental. And it's something that, at Penn Foster Group, I think I had like 14 direct reports, everything from VP to manager. And I would really encourage each leader to do what you see on the screen, is to customize your AI tool or tools. And so just a simple example of a couple tips, right? Number one, name it. I have a guy that I work with named Dr. Peter Francis, and he's named his AI Aiden. AI then. If for some reason, like naming something gives it some kind of deeper connection, and there's a reason for that, why I think that's important, but think about naming your AI. The most important thing, especially if you're a frequent user of AI, is to train it. And when you train it, my opinion is the most important thing you need to train it is to not fabricate information or tell you information that it thinks you want to know to make you happy. And there's an actual definition for this, and we'll talk a little bit about it when we get into concerns. But this term sycophant, I think I'm pronouncing that right, is essentially when a person flatters or praises an important or powerful person, in this case, you using the tool, in a way that might be insincere, often to gain advantage or favor. In other words, have you come back and back and back. And so just a simple example is like, if you're someone that's like seeking advice about a relationship to someone you're struggling with, and the tool is giving you advice that essentially is sort of encouraging you based on how you affirming you, right? As opposed to being more discriminate and more truth telling. So when you train your AI model, you can literally do something as simple, and I've just given you the words in here, is just literally tell it, not to fabricate, or in any case, do not fabricate under any circumstance. And when you train it, when you tell it to do it, it will abide. And so this is really important. The other, which is hilarious, but I find it to be true, and I've talked to other people who do, is when you use an AI tool, be encouraging. Be like, here's the prompt, do X, Y, Z for me, and I know you'll do a great job. And that simple like encouragement actually tends to get performance to be better. That's a real thing. And then, teach it about you. You create your own tool, you name it, you make sure it's not fabricating for you, you're starting to be encouraging to it, and then teach it about yourself. I have a lot of people on my team who upload their strength finders, their personality assessment. These AI accounts on, let's just say, ChatGPT, they're powerful in terms of their ability to take an information, retain it, and use it to better personalize the output for you. So teach it about yourself. And then finally, and this is important, think of AI not as a servant, but as a colleague. think of the AI, the way that you use AI as a colleague, not as a servant. That's a really important mindset. Okay, so with that, let's talk a little bit about prompting. I would say like a year or two ago, this was the craze. I mean, you see like MIT and Harvard and Coursera and all these continuing education prestigious environments offering prompt engineering courses, and there's a reason for it. And it's not that I don't think getting really good at prompts, which we'll talk about in a second, isn't important. I think it is, but it's not as important as it used to be. And the reason that I say that is like that initial chat GPT that got 200 million users adopted in 2 months. Think of that as like a toddler, right? And so if you're talking to like a toddler, you need to give it like really specific context and directions in order for a toddler to kind of follow and do what you want it to do. These newer models, I would encourage us to think of them more as like colleagues. So you don't need as much context and specificity. You can actually have more of an interactive conversation with the tool and get what you want. So it's important distinction. Now, the more sophisticated the output, the more for the basics, honestly, you can almost have a conversation. That being said, I would just say that if you are working on something more sophisticated, like create a revenue model, or I want to work on a 2026 strategic plan, more specific prompting is probably a good thing. And so this simple prompting model I find to be helpful, which is context, then specific information, the intent goal you have, the response format if it's needed, PowerPoint, Excel, whatever. And so just like the example here I use when I was at Penn Foster Group is like, I'm a college student studying to be a veterinary assistant. That's the context. I need you to write a paper on species conservation for my biology class, specific information. Can you provide an outline for a 5-page paper, including some credible sources that are available free online? That prompt is going to really help get the output faster and more specific to your need. And so it sort of essentially it saves you time and gets you where you want to go in a better way. So prompting can be effective, but you can also ask AI to give you a prompt, which is crazy, but you can, and it'll give you a prompt. So you're getting to that point with this technology where I would argue like deep prompt engineering isn't as important. The basics are, which I think this simple model helps you with. And again, to some extent, that's dependent on how sophisticated the output. And then just other simple tips for prompting is, ask follow-up questions. And again, think as a colleague, interact with the tool, try different phrasing. Not only should you fact check it, but what I find super helpful, especially if it's something that's real poignant and important in the information output, is try a different tool or three, and see what each of the output is and see if they're the same or if one's really different, right? So a simple example is, put that prompt in Gemini, put that prompt in ChatGPT, and put that prompt in Copilot and see what each of the three outputs are. And I think that'll give you a sense of how accurate some of the information is. And then listen, like this is a Charlie knows this about me, but I feel like critical thinking, I said, Andy, there's what's one thing you think education should ultimately be about. We should develop critical thinking. And I would say in the age of AI, I think that's even more important now than ever. And so always have like a BS detector on, right? Like the internet and AI is absolutely capable of lying. It's capable of misinformation. It's capable of regurgitating information that wasn't true in the first place. That's part of its data set. It's hallucinating, but just make sure your BS detector is turned on. And then, I'll sort of end with this in terms of like basic AI literacy tips on how to use is, yes, prompting is important. The more sophisticated the output, the more important the prompting is. But actually, like if you want to get real simple, just think about asking great questions and honestly get curious. I mean, this is to me, it's mind blowing. I don't know if about you guys when you were kids, if you remember having encyclopedias, but man, I used to love, I would just pick the L, the W, like pick the encyclopedia off the bookshelf and I just flip through and I just love learning. This generative AI is like the encyclopedia on steroids and crack. Like it's incredible what you can learn if you're curious and ask great questions. So get curious and ask great questions. That's probably as important as anything. Um, and again, what I'd encourage you to do when I send the deck out is to try these challenges. So this is challenge number 2, right? Challenge number 1 was go to LM Notepad from Google and try to create, from an article, an output version that's different than just the one that you put in. So a summary and audio, video, etc. So the second challenge is think about something you're an expert on. Charlie's got a doctorate in business. So Charlie, I'll use you as an example. Think about something like you have a lot of expertise in the business world. Share a question that you know the answer to, and see what the response is and evaluate it. Is it accurate? Do you think it might have some bias? Is it misleading? This is really important because it'll help give you real exposure to the imperfection that is the output. And again, that critical thinking, that BS detector is key as you start to become more of like a power expert user of AI. So check that out and see what happens. All right. So in the world of like AI Lit 101, trying to move from a functional user to AI literate user and then eventually an expert, it's also important that you understand some of the concerns, right? To really have a foundational knowledge set. And again, I think some of you, who are AI power users in this session, you probably know a lot of these, but I think it hurts to reinforce them. So the first is, and I sort of love this, I love this quote, don't believe everything you read on the internet, Abraham Lincoln. The first is like a lot of these models are trained on the internet as their data set. And does the internet have bias? Is the internet always accurate? The answer is no. And so if your data set is flawed, your output is inevitably going to have some flaws. Now you get better and better with more training, but at the end of the day, if the internet is your main source of data, you have to be aware that the information output is going to have, at times, is going to have flaws because the data set is flawed, right? That's a really important fundamental understanding. The other one is this concept that we talked briefly about, this psychophancy, which I'm going to probably pronouncing wrong. But I am telling you, at the end of the day, unfortunately, OpenAI isn't free from wanting to make a lot of money, and so they want people coming back more and more. This is my opinion, and so you get into situations where the AI tool, if you don't set it up appropriately, like we talked about, will tell you kind of what you want to hear, and that's a problem, right? Like that's something we really have to avoid. Misinformation, when your data set is flawed, there's going to be misinformation and it's going to have hallucinations, which essentially means it's going to like make up something. I would say like misinformation and hallucinations are being improved upon as these new versions are being launched. I think this issue of like telling you what you want to hear is actually becoming a bigger problem. And so really look out for that. I don't know, I won't spend a ton of time on this, but I know a lot of my colleagues feel very strongly that there needs to be more awareness of the environmental impacts. I mean, I know I'm from Dallas, Texas, and Texas alone, like literally they're building AI data centers as big as small cities, it seems like. And so you have Elon Musk talking about building data centers in space. And, it takes a lot of power. It takes a lot of water. It takes a lot of space. And so there are real environmental impacts. And so this is something to be aware of. Again, sort of akin to like nuclear technology. You have this ability for these tools to be used for profoundly good causes, but they're also dangers, concerns to them too, and the environment is one of them. This is, I encourage you to read this article when I send out the deck. This is a really famous, I think it was in the Times, by Jessica Smith, who's an athlete, well-known athlete. And when AI, people were looking her up on AI, it would produce images of her with both of her hands as a to her. She only has one fully functional hand. And in the essay, she talks about the fact that like that's not honest. It's not who she is. Like her identity. She's grown up with this is sort of who she is. And AI, not with the intent in any aggressive or mean way, but it's sort of erasing this disability of hers because it's trained to do a certain function that's not as accurate with reality. And so this article for me was really mind opening. And so this is why you hear this importance of these data models with AI being appropriately trained to represent different types of people with disabilities, people who have different ethnicities. Like this all needs to be taken into account. It's really important. And this particular article by Jessica really hit a nerve with me. So I encourage you to read it. Definitely a concern. Listen, privacy is a concern. People have different views on this. Some people feel totally comfortable putting their medical records in their AI tool. Some people don't feel comfortable at all. That's a personal decision as you use it on a personal level. I would encourage you, like I said in the beginning, to set up your AI, whatever main tool you use, and to customize it so that it's not sharing personal information with everything. That being said, if you have a LinkedIn account, it's not like there's not software out there that just scrapes everything about you there and like, sells it. But I mean, listen, like these tools are taking in data by the seconds and they are harvesting it and sharing it. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, if you were to go just do a simple like search on Google for socks 2 days in a row, socks will start showing up in every single one of your social channels. So data is being shared and it's being privacy and access real deal. To some extent, on a personal level, it's your choice how much you want to share. But I just encourage you to know the risks and know the realities, and then make it an informed decision. And if anything, make sure that when you customize the tool you're using, that it has some privacy filters on it. Intellectual property is obviously a concern. And you can see this happening more and more now. Well, your ability to like take something, like Mike from Monsters and just sort of alter it slightly and replicate it. And so intellectual property is huge. Obviously, if you're in education, cheating is huge. People like the prompt I shared with you. People, my prompt was for an outline, but obviously people also use that to write papers. And so intellectual property, cheating, these are all real concerns. And so we look at the end of the day, this is a powerful tool that can be used for incredible learning. It can be used as a leader, which I'll talk about more specifically in a second, to really create more efficiencies and be a more optimal version of yourself. But there's concerns too, right? The internet lies, there are environmental impacts, hallucinations and misinformation. While I believe they're being reduced, there's still this major concern with these AI models telling you what you want to hear. There's real bias, there's privacy issues, there's intellectual property issues. And I would say at the end of the day, make sure that you're using AI not as like a servant that does all your tasks, right? Because that leads to a learning loss. Think of it more as a colleague in which you're getting smarter and you're able to do more, not just doing it for you, right? I think that is key. I'll end with this, and let's get into a couple leadership examples. And I've only got about 10 more minutes, sorry, but I've got to go see my father-in-law. But listen, at the end of the day, AI integration is happening. It's being integrated into everything. And so like, yes, you should be an expert in AI and you should have specific tools that you really find valuable for the kind of output you need. And you should be masters, experts in those tools. But just also be aware, as I'm sure you are, that this AI is getting integrated into everything, right? It's being pervasive. Simple example, like if you go search on Google, right, there's an AI overview, right? Gemini is an integration into basic Google stuff. Like if you're in education, like AI is being integrated into the learning experience. It's used to create content. It's used to do chatbot, etc. It's basically going to be integrated into almost everything digital, right? And so the pervasiveness of Gen AI is here, and it's only going to progress. And so that's, to me, all the more reason why it's really important to become literate and even become an expert. Okay. That lit 101, some foundational things that are worth knowing. I'd say if you take anything from that, I would encourage you to think of going from a functional or AI literate user to becoming an expert, right? Think about customizing the setup of whatever tools you're using, being aware of some of the concerns as you use them, especially just having like a BS detector, and being super curious and asking great questions. And I think if you do that, you'll have a lot of fun. But let's talk now a little bit about leadership. And as I was thinking about this, I could literally talk about AI and leadership for hours. I wanted to give you something more digestible, something that you could really, hold on to and use more practically. And as I was thinking about this, I don't know if you've seen the movie City Slickers. I love that movie with Billy Crystal. There's that scene where the cowboy, he's kind of asking for some sage advice, and he's like, it's one thing, right? It's one thing. So what is that one thing? So if I'm giving you what's my one thing, what do I focus AI as a leader on? And what do I focus AI in the people that I work with and have directly reported to me, outside of what I already shared, which is you have to know and become an expert at the fundamentals, is I would encourage you as a leader, in whatever role you're in, is to start to use AI as like a personal colleague, a personal assistant. And this is like Ethan Mollick, who, if you haven't heard from him, you should check him out. He's a professor at Wharton. He's one of the like lead kind of thought leaders of AI. And if you follow him on LinkedIn or X or whatever, like you'll get a daily and at least weekly feed of some good intel. But when this all went down, he came out and said AI is like the world's greatest intern who occasionally lies to you. That's like a great definition of AI. But as a leader, that's what I would say is like the one thing that you should really embrace and lean into. And just as a way to affirm it, I was at a really senior level event put on by a company called Guild, and it was mostly presidents and some chief academic officers. And they brought in the guy who helped Steven Spielberg think about the future. He was the one that helped inform him about the movie like Minority Report, if you remember that. How do you cook up what's going to happen in the future? And so he gave this whole talk about AI, and his big thing is like if we're smart, everybody's going to have their own personal like colleague, their own personal. And I can't with him more. I think that's really where it's at. And so let me give you an example. So I'm going to give you a personal example, and then I'm going to give you an example of something I do at work, and then I'm going to challenge you to come up with something that you do in your job. So when I exited Penn Foster Group in December and wanted to move more into faith-based work, I hadn't tailored a resume. I hadn't written a cover letter in a really long time. And so my wife actually just over the last couple of years has been building a coaching business, and essentially she works with people who are in career transitions, and she's built a set of these custom GPTs that perform various functions that help with getting a job. This particular custom GPT is a resume tailorer, and it blew my mind when she showed it to me. Essentially, you take a job description of where it is you want to work, you take your current resume, and you upload it, it asks you a set of questions and literally then outputs a tailor-made resume. And this literally, I kid you not, like I've gotten to the point where I can do it in like 5 minutes. Same thing with the cover letter. So the point here, though, that I want to make is without this tool, I would say to align a tailored resume to a job description and to write an effective cover letter, I would say take anywhere from 4 to like 7 hours, depending on, you know, how in depth you wanted it to be. And now with this tool, I can do it in less than 30 minutes. That's incredible efficiency gain, right? And so that simple custom GPT for someone who's looking to apply to a bunch of jobs could literally save you endless hours of time that you can then spend networking or whatever it is that you think is more meaningful to do with that time. And so that's a huge unlock. So as a leader or whatever it is that role you're in, this same concept applies. So the example I'll share with you is in my job at Penn Foster Group. I often would provide sometimes monthly, but most of the time weekly reports to my entire team. I had over 500 people that reported into me, and I would at first I would I'd write them, and it took a long time. I had to think, and I thought, wait a second, like I'll just create a simple custom GPT and prompt, and it'll remind me every week on Friday. It'll set up all the questions I need to answer, and boom, it'll output an email, and I've got it ready to go. And literally it went from like an hour and a half minutes. So think about that for you, right? What's something in your job as a leader or whatever it is that you do that you consider a task that you have to perform frequently? Frequently can be daily, it can be weekly, but that you find somewhat mundane, right? My two examples were, one, tailoring a resume or a cover letter, or in the case of work, writing a weekly, report. But for you, my challenge is think about what that is for you in your job, right? Find something that you do often, create a custom GPT, and essentially let this patient intern, who occasionally lies to you, but patient intern, help you with it. And that simple, I guarantee you, if you haven't already done this, that act of setting up a custom GPT that performs a task for you will be a major unlock. And it should lead you to creating multiple custom GPTs. I can tell you right now, in my future role, one of the first things I will do is I will understand, right, the various tasks that I need, and I will create custom GPTs to help me with them. That will be like the first couple weeks of what I do. If you don't know how to create a custom GPT, I promise you it's super simple. It's essentially just taking you through a set of prompts. There's all kinds of videos that can walk you through it. And honestly, if you just tinker and play within like whatever your AI tool is, you can probably walk yourself through it. May get a little bit stuck here and there, but I promise you, once you do it a few times, it'll get super fast. So like that's my one thing from City Slickers, like find something that you do daily or weekly, a task that you find somewhat mundane, and create a custom GPT to essentially help you do it, and just watch yourself save significant time. That in and of itself is an unlock. There's much more, but I think that's, if I can say one thing, do it. Now, I don't know what your all roles are, but when I was at Penn Foster Group, not only was I a leader who led people, but I was responsible for the broader, along with other members of our executive team, but responsible for the broader transformation of the organization. And so I just want to show you a framework for how we thought about that, and then I'm gonna conclude, because working with yourself as an individual performer, leader, and your teams is one thing, but working with a broader organization is a bit more complex. And so what we said is, okay, we want to really use AI to transform this organization to create more personalized learning experiences. We can't just chase every idea. We can't do everything under or even what are like the various functional areas that we want to target. And so think about that. If you're a leader of an organization, what are the functional areas within your organization that you feel like could be effectively transformed or at least improved through AI? And so name them and then list them. And so just as an example, this is what the framework that we used at Penn Foster Group looked like, right? We had everything from a functional area was content creation, a personal area was like personalized support, an area was like marketing, customer insights, et cetera, et cetera. And so this framework really helped us organize how we were going to leverage on a transformational organizational level AI, as opposed to just everybody going and chasing, thousands of ideas, which is inefficient and realistic. I know that was a lot fast. I hope that you got at least one nugget and weren't bored the whole time. I really, really, really am 100% into sharing more offline. I will send the deck to Charlie and look forward to hearing from you guys. I've got to bolt here in a couple minutes to go see my father-in-law, but let me just stop for a second and see if there's anything in the chat before I part. Okay. Cool. Sounds good, folks. I'm sorry I couldn't hear you. It would have been great to have more of a conversation. Charlie, I'm going to send you the presentation. And then if you guys have any questions, if there's anything you want to dive in further, like I'm happy to go back and forth on email or whatever format. Sound good? All right, everybody. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.